I'm about to get married and expect parents to fulfill the promise that they made to pay for my wedding after they spent $100,000 for sister's wedding. But turns out all I'll be getting is her leftovers, including the wedding dress she chose for her wedding, because they expect me to be the mature one and not overspend on an event as minor as a wedding, and now they're mad because I responded to them saying absolutely. I'll start cutting off costs by disinviting both of you first. So 6 years ago, my oldest sister got married and it was a whole thing. My parents went crazy and spent about $100,000 roughly on the wedding. On top of that, her in-laws also contributed, but obviously not as much. So in total, the wedding definitely cost much more. It was her destination wedding in Switzerland, which is where she and her husband first went on holiday. A lot of people were invited, including pretty much our entire high school population and whoever she went to college with. And of course our family, friends, and even some acquaintances made the cut. It was a very expensive affair, but my parents were fine with it because at the time, my dad's company was doing really well and my mom is a doctor with her own practice, so even she's in a pretty good place financially. They could afford it, and they wanted to pull out all the stops, so they did. Back then, I had even asked them if when I got married, would they do the same thing for me? And they had said that they definitely would, so I held them to their promise, and recently, because I'm getting married, I asked them to cover the cost of my wedding as well. And I'm not even asking for half or even a quarter of whatever they spent on my sister's wedding. We're not having a destination wedding or inviting a bunch of people. We just want our friends and family at the wedding, and we have chosen a hotel a little outside the city because the place itself is pretty stunning. It's nothing my parents cannot afford. And even here, my fiancé's parents are also contributing to the wedding, so they are willing to go 50-50 on the expenses. Whatever is left over, my fiancé and I are handling it ourselves. But when I brought this up with my parents just a couple of days ago while we were discussing the wedding, they started acting really stingy about it. The one really expensive thing that I wanted for my wedding was a custom-made bridal gown, and that was not something that I was willing to compromise on. But they started insisting that I wear my sister's wedding dress instead because overspending on something as minor as a wedding was not something they expected from me. They started telling me that they were already spending a lot of money, which is really not true. I don't think the wedding is expensive at all, at least for them. But my dad started telling me that his finances have really taken a hit ever since the pandemic, and he cannot afford the same kind of wedding he had for my sister. So I should be happy with whatever they're offering me instead of making demands. And I got really mad at them because I knew for a fact that that was not true. If my dad was telling the truth about his business having suffered during the pandemic, which I really don't think it did because he's in the pharmaceutical industry, and as far as I know, that has been booming ever since the pandemic hit. Anyway, even if I do entertain the idea that maybe he was telling the truth, then it's very strange that he's choosing to be more conscious about his finances right now when it comes to my wedding, when in the past 4 years, he has never made a single effort to cut down on costs. And if anything, I think my parents have been living more lavishly than ever. So I don't know why my mom and dad are pretending as if I'm asking for way too much. Anyway, that turned into an argument and they started calling me entitled and implied that I was being spoiled. So I flared up at them, and I told them that I definitely would consider cutting costs and I would start by disinviting them from the wedding. Then I stormed out, and since then, I haven't spoken to them even though they have been trying to get in touch with me since the fight. They call me immature and entitled and said that I'm acting like a brat, and even my sister agrees. But the thing is, in spite of how rich my parents are, I've grown up always wearing my sister's hand-me-downs. I've never had a problem with it, but right now, since I'm about to get married, I think at least this time, they can spend a little on me. I've discussed this with my fiancé as well, and he is divided on it. He thinks that it is damn money after all, so they can do whatever they want to with it. But they've also promised me something, and now it seems like they are backing out of it and gaslighting me to be believing that I'm asking for too much because I'm really not. So now I'm very confused. Either for demanding that my parents cover certain costs of my wedding and disinviting them since they refuse to. Edit. Hi. So since some of you wanted clarity on how exactly the expenses were being divided, here they are. So my parents have been asked to cover the cost of catering and the wedding dress that I want. My fiancé's parents are paying for the venue and decor. And as for the expenses related to the bridal party, my fiancé and I are bearing those costs. And as for the cost of the hotel rooms for guests, our parents are splitting that amongst themselves. So that's how everything has been divided, and honestly my fiancé and I have planned it all out in a way that it's affordable for our parents and we are not straining them financially. Because even though his parents are well-to-do, it's not like they are as fluent as my parents, so we don't want to be a burden on them. And like I said earlier, for my parents, the amount that they're being asked to spend is pretty much nothing. They'd probably spend more than this on their annual anniversary party, so I don't understand why they can't do this for me once. And I know a lot of people were implying that my sister is the golden child. And right now, Given the current situation, I might agree with that, but that hasn't always been the case. Most of the time, my parents actually treated us both the same, except they never used to spend as much money as they did on her. Even though they were really rich, they would always make me use her hand-me-downs when it came to clothes, shoes, and other things like that, and I didn't mind it. Because my sister had good taste, and I actually liked looking like her because I did look up to her for a very long time. And even now, in spite of the fact that she's siding with our parents, I still do. So back then, it never occurred to me that it was weird that they were so stingy when it came to me. Now, though, all of that is hitting me hard, and I don't know what to say anymore. Maybe she is the golden child after all, and I'm not. Update 1. Hello. Thank you so much to everyone who commented on my post and gave me some clarity on the situation. It really means a lot to me, even the people who said that I was entitled and all that. But, anyway, I have decided that I'm going to stick to my decision of disinviting my parents because, honestly, it's just not even about the money anymore. It's about the promise that they said they would live up to, and now they are refusing. I don't like the fact that they're trying to make me look like the bad guy here, even though it's them who had promised me something and now they're backing out of it. So I have every right to be upset with them. And, of course, I have to be angry because after having done so much for my sister's wedding, I'm asking for so little, and they're giving me a hard time over that. It just doesn't seem fair, and I think I'm not wrong in saying that if it's their money and they can choose what to do with it, then it's also my wedding, and I can choose whom to invite as long as I'm not taking any money from them. So if I am entitled to expect them to contribute to my wedding after they said that they would, then they're even more entitled to expect me to invite them to my wedding after giving me so much crap for just expecting them to live up to their promises instead of making excuses. Update 2. Hey, so 9 days have passed since my last conversation with my parents. And since then, I have not been replying to any of their messages or responding to any of their phone calls. My sister has also tried to get through to me, but I have been ignoring her as well. The fact of the matter is that she doesn't understand what I'm going through. She's always received whatever she has asked for, and our parents have never put up a fight when it comes to her. They're only doing it with me and I don't like it and she doesn't understand that it's unfair. So I don't need to engage with her and waste my time trying to explain either. This is between me and our parents, and I don't want her involved in this. Because I know that if I do try to argue with her, it's just going to make the situation worse, and I really don't want that. Anyway, for the last couple of days, my parents had stopped trying to get through to me and I thought that they were giving up on the situation or something. But today, they tried to speak to my fiancé instead. So far, they had been keeping him out of this, probably out of respect for the situation between us. But today, they texted him and they told him that they really wanted him to try and talk some sense to me because things were going too far and they did not want our relationship to be ruined beyond repair. After all, I'm going to be married soon and they want to be there for me because I'm their daughter and I'm important to them. Even though I'm probably not going to believe that right now, it's a fact. And the least I can do is at least talk to them and sort things out. And it's good to know that they still think that I'm important to them. But it wouldn't hurt for them to at least show it to me sometimes. They made a promise and the only thing I'm asking them to do is just live up to it. I don't care if it makes me entitled at this point. I think I'm entitled to be entitled, if that makes sense. I don't care if I come off as petty, but I want them to prove that I am just as important to them as their older daughter. And if they can't do that for me, then maybe they're not telling the truth about how important I am to them. It must be hurtful for them. I do acknowledge that, but they don't understand how hurtful it's been for me as well. The past couple of days have been very difficult for me and I've been feeling really miserable about everything. I'm about to get married. This is the last thing that I want, but the situation is just so unfair that I don't even think that I can let it go. My fiancé knows my feelings on this matter. He replied to my parents saying the same thing, that he doesn't want to get caught up in this and that if they really want to sort things out with me, then they should stick to talking to me. They did not like his response and they started saying that at least he, of all people, should understand what's good for me and try to set me on the right track instead of backing me up on this. Apparently, my parents think that if my fiancé really knew what was good for me, he would try to side with my parents and explain to me why I was being immature and get me to apologize to them. That's literally what they said to him in their message, and that infuriated my fiancé as well. So he replied to them saying that I was a grown woman and I could make my own choices. And he did not need to feel the need to be a parent to me and try to influence my decisions about something like this, given that it was a very delicate situation. After saying that, he muted my parents, and they did not respond to him either, probably because they felt like he had really put them in their place since the tone of his message had been very curt. When we were both back home from work and he told me all about it, I was actually very annoyed that they were going out of their way to get him involved in any of this at all because it was so unnecessary. And he was right regarding whatever he had said. This is between me and my parents, and I am an adult. I can decide what's good for myself, and the situation is a lot more complicated than they think it is. It's not just about the money like they think. It's about the promise that they made. And I'm sick of repeating myself, but I really don't think they understand. And feelings are involved here. They have hurt me emotionally with their behavior. They can't just take that back and pretend like everything is normal. So things are not as simple as they are making it out to be, and it cannot be solved by contacting my fiancé. I'm trying to push him to get me to apologize to them, especially when I really don't think that I have anything to be sorry for. I think they do, so if they really want to sort things out with me, they should come to me and apologize. And even if they don't, I'm fine with it. I'll just go on with the wedding without them. We're going to have to do a little cost cutting, and I'm going to have to dip into my savings to make up for whatever my parents will not pay for. But I'm ready to do it. At least I won't have to sacrifice my self-respect and dignity, so it's fine. Update 3. Hi. So my parents tried to reach out to my fiancé last week, and when it did not work out, well, they stopped trying to contact either of us. For 1 week, I thought that they had given up and I was content with it as well. I had even started planning the wedding according to my own finances because I had decided that I was not going to accept any help from my parents from this point onward. It was very clear that they were not willing to help me and I did not want to be a burden to people who were clearly not willing to live up to their word. I had not blocked them or anything. I had just stopped responding a really long time ago, and recently they had stopped trying to get through to me as well. But my sister had continued to try and get through to me, saying that she really did not want me to deal with things like this and kept insisting that I was being rash. And this was very unlike me. And maybe it was because earlier I probably would have just let this slide instead of making a big deal out of it because I wanted things to be peaceful. But I felt like things had come to a point where I absolutely had to take a stand for myself because they could not just keep treating me like a second-class citizen in my own family and expect me to continue taking it forever. I'm a grown woman now, and if they don't want to help me, that's fine with me. But they don't have to pretend and make a fool out of me because that's really insulting. Anyway, I thought that they were done trying to get through to me, but yesterday in the evening I received a message from my parents yet again. It was a pretty long one, saying that they were very disappointed with the way that I had decided to deal with things because they believed that everything could be sorted out if I just tried to give them a chance, and spoke to them instead of consistently ignoring them just because they refused to bow down to my whims and fancies. The language that they used was quite infuriating, and it was clear from the tone of the message that they thought that they were the long-suffering parents here over the victims of my entitled and vindictive nature. But I honestly don't think that's the case, even though they believe it themselves. They said that they really wanted me to reply to that message because they believed that there was still hope for us to reconcile even though I was acting very bratty. And that really got on my nerves because even now, after so much time had passed, they had still not done even a bit of introspection, and it had not even occurred to them that they might not be in the right in this situation. So I ended up replying to that message and I told them I was not willing to speak to them at all unless they were willing to maybe entertain the idea that they were not exactly right in this whole situation. And if they couldn't even bring themselves to do that, then there was nothing that we could talk about. I waited for a reply for a couple of minutes, but it never came. About 2 hours after that message, my mom called me up, and she told me that she was calling to sort things out with me, and she really did not want to fight. I was on speaker, and my dad was also in the room, and she told me to just say whatever was on my mind. So I verbalized everything that I have been thinking for the past couple of weeks. Basically, everything that I mentioned in my post previously regarding my feelings on this situation, I said it out loud to them, and then I waited for them to respond to it. I genuinely thought that some good was going to come out of this conversation, but, unfortunately, I was wrong. Because as soon as I was done, my parents started talking, and it seemed like they hadn't even heard a word of whatever I had said. As soon as I started speaking, I realized that letting me go first had probably just been a formality, and they couldn't care less about what I had to say. I'm not even sure if they had actually bothered to hear me out or if they just pretended to be attentive or something so that I couldn't say that they hadn't even given me a chance to speak. Anyway, they just kept victimizing themselves while they were speaking, saying that they didn't understand what I wanted from them even though I had specified exactly what I wanted. They told me that it was their money and it was unfair of me to expect them to go to extraordinary lengths for me just because I was getting married. They defended themselves, saying that when they had made that promise to me, their financial condition had been different, and so back then, it wouldn't have been a problem. And then they tried to turn it around on me, saying that if I had chosen to get married earlier, then this wouldn't have been a problem at all. And when I tried to interrupt them and remind them of the fact that in the past couple of years, they had never compromised on any financial decisions and had continued to maintain the same lifestyle that they had always had, they told me that was not a big deal, and it was their choice how they wanted to spend their money. They got very defensive, and then when I told them that it was my wedding after all so I could invite whoever I wanted to, they obviously had no comeback for that. So instead, they did what they do best and started attacking me personally once again. That's when I started recording the phone call and they went down to call me insolent, selfish, disrespectful, and even said that they regretted the fact that they had even tried to make things right with me. They got quite vicious, and my mom told me that the only reason they had been trying so hard to fix things with me was that at the end of the day, whether they liked it or not, I was, after all, their daughter, and I was always going to be associated with them. So if my wedding was too shabby, then even that would be associated with them, and they did not want to wear that like a badge of shame. But now, they couldn't care less about what I wanted to do because clearly I had made my decision and they did not want to compromise their self-respect and dignity by interacting with me anymore. They told me that they did not want to consider me their daughter anymore, and if I did not apologize to them in future they would be officially disowning me. I told them that they were free to do so because I was not interested in being their daughter anyway, since they had clearly proven themselves to be the most shallow people I've ever known. They were very upset with me, so they cursed at me some more, but I was not interested in hearing more of that, so I just hung up. I tried to call off for a couple of minutes, but then I just sent that recording to my sister along with the context of the conversation, and I did not spare any details. I said exactly what had been said by both parties, and I told her that these were the people that she had been defending for so long. As I had said at the beginning, my sister and I had always had a good relationship and I actually did respect her a lot, even though in this situation itself, she seemed pretty misguided. I still thought that I should just let her know exactly what our parents felt about me and that I was not wrong. I had higher expectations from her than I did from my parents, and thankfully, at least she lived up to them. I was half expecting her to say to me that our parents had been perfectly well within their rights to say whatever they said in that recording that I sent her, and that it was completely valid for them to be so upset to start attacking me personally because, honestly, since she had been defending them for so long, I thought that she would defend them now as well. I'm very grateful that she didn't. After hearing the message, she replied to me saying that she would speak to our parents and try to get them to apologize to me because so far, she had been siding with them, but this was not fair to me. She herself also apologized to me saying that this was not what she had expected at all. I didn't respond to that because at the time I was really upset and I needed to cool off. For a couple of hours, I didn't speak to anyone, but late at night, she called me up and I picked up. She apologized to me profusely and told me that she had no idea that our parents would say such horrible things to me. I actually ended up breaking down, and I told her everything from what I was feeling to how upset I had been with her as well. And she told me that it was completely valid for me to be upset with her because she herself had been way too blind to see that our parents were not treating me well. Our parents had been manipulating her into believing that I was the bad guy in the situation, and she had been falling for it all the way. But after this conversation that she just had with her parents trying to defend me, she did not feel the same way at all. And she apologized to me once again and told me that she had tried to get our parents to see that the things that they had said on the phone call were not right, but they told her to stay out of it and got pretty nasty with her as well. So it was clear that they just couldn't stand being told that the way they were behaving was not right. They just wanted her to keep agreeing with everything that they said and did. And the second that she tried to stand up for me, they started attacking her as well. She told me that she was not going to be speaking to our parents unless they apologized to me. And I told her that she didn't have to do that, but she told me that she absolutely definitely had to. She just couldn't stop apologizing and told me that she hoped that this would not change anything between us because she had been wrong about everything regarding our parents. And she really didn't want me to feel hurt. I told her I was completely ready to disregard whatever had happened in the past couple of weeks because at least she had come to her senses and tried to stand up for me, and that's what really mattered now. So even though I was not able to set things right with my parents, at least I was able to do so with my sister, and that actually means more to me because I had always been close to her. Update 4. So it's been 2 weeks, and thankfully, my sister and I have met quite a couple of times over the last few weeks and have sorted things out. She apologized to me, and I accepted it. That was it. We did not want to drag it out further, so there were no long-drawn discussions of her behavior because I knew that our parents were trying to manipulate her, and they are pretty manipulative, so maybe that's why they succeeded. But now, she's not speaking to them and neither am I, and because of their own behavior, they have just lost contact with both their children. So I hope that they are happy now. I know I am because even though they had backed out of their commitment and I had to start considering cutting costs, my sister stepped in and told me that she would definitely be helping me out. I tried to tell her that she really didn't have to do it, but she said that this was the least she could do to make it up to me. I had insisted so many times that she didn't have to contribute financially because she hadn't promised me anything. But she didn't listen to me, and I actually think it's very sweet of her. Of course, even now, we can't have the wedding at the same scale that we would have been able to if my parents had contributed, but at least I don't have to scale down as significantly as I thought earlier. So we are at a middle ground, and I'm very grateful for that. At this point, even if my parents apologize to me, it's not going to make a difference because I'm still not going to invite them to my wedding. And as far as I can see, They're probably not going to be invited to any subsequent events either because they have treated me badly, and I don't want them back in my life anymore. So far, I have been looking at them through rose-colored glasses, but the glasses are off now, and I see their true colors. And I see my importance in that life, and I don't want it anymore. I'm way happier without them, to be honest. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.